in the room. Apologies for repeating, but welcome to the WAPC Part 17 meeting of Thursday the 19th of June 2025. I'd like to welcome those who are present today in person as well as those online. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and is available for viewing via the Commission's website or YouTube. In opening the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay our respects to elders past and present. I'd like to also make a statement today in that we are determining a significant development under Part 17 of the Planning and Development Act, and Part 17 does bestow upon the Commission a perceived unlimited level of discretion. However, the discretion must be exercised responsibly. Under the Act, the Commission must have due regard for the purpose and intent of the local planning scheme and local planning policies, the need to ensure orderly and proper planning and the preservation of the amenity of a locality, the need to facilitate development in response to the economic impacts of COVID-19 and any relevant region planning schemes, state planning policies and any other WAPC policies. As with any planning application, the Commission does have the option to approve the application subject to conditions, to defer the application pending further information, or to refuse the application. And this is a considerable responsibility which the Commission takes very seriously. Throughout the meeting, Commissioners will refer to electronic devices to assist them in considering the information before them. Any media inquiries regarding this application will be dealt with by the Department of Lands, Planning and Heritage in consultation with the Minister for Planning's office. So I thank members of the public for your dedicated engagement on this matter and for your participation in the community consultation. Commission members have received each submission submitted through public consultation as part of the agenda before them. So in terms of apologies and leave of absence, today we do have a leave of absence for Commissioner Brooks, and we have Commissioner Heron and Commissioner Lakey absent due to a conflict of interest. In person today we have myself, Chairperson and Commissioner Cole, Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Sandry and Commissioner Shears. Online we have Commissioner Adair and Commissioner Hall, both attending remotely due to being in the regions. We do have some disclosures of interest in relation to this item. First from Commissioner Heron, an indirect pecuniary interest in that Commissioner Heron has advised that Urbis are part of the consultant team associated with the application and he is an employee of Urbis, so Commissioner Heron is not attending the meeting. Commissioner Lakey has declared an indirect pecuniary interest in that Commissioner Lakey advises that he is the Chair of Foundation Housing, who have established a potential commercial relationship with members of the proponent team for this item, and as such, Commissioner Lakey is not attending the meeting. I also have a declaration of impartiality interest from Commissioner Bianca Sandry in that in her former role, Bianca represented the applicant for number 19 Napoleon Street in 2022 and 2023, and this application is briefly referred to in the officer report, although it has no direct relationship to the proposed development. Members, I'm happy to accept that as a perceived impartiality interest unless there is any dissent. No, thank you very much. Disclosures of representation where Commission members have been contacted by a member of the applicant team. I have none, just checking members. Thank you very much. And declaration of due consideration. Can all members please indicate that they have received and considered the agenda before them today? Thank you very much. Members, also to note that there has been additional information due to questions from members, and that is available on the agenda at item 1.5.1. We will now move to deputations and presentations for the item, and I am going to now Sam, our Secretary, to introduce the deputies. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone that's here present this afternoon in order to make a deputation to the Western Australian Planning Commission. You will be invited to join us at the table in front of me here to deliver your deputation this afternoon. We will ask that you speak into the microphone loud and clearly so we can ensure that everyone online can and within the room can hear your deputation clearly. You have been advised of your allocated time for your deputation this afternoon, which will be managed by a timer which will appear on the screen, which will count down that allocated time. If you do have a PowerPoint presentation this afternoon, this will be shared on the screen and you're asked to advise if you wish to advance the slides. So moving now to the first deputation this afternoon on item on the Part 17 development application with the demolition of commercial buildings and construction of the mixed-use development at lots 50 and 35 Station Street, Cottesloe. We're welcoming Caroline Arundel. Good afternoon, Caroline.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Over to you when you're ready. Thank you.
Great. I would like to appeal to the Commission members' professional pride and desire to leave a positive legacy of exemplary urban design that balances the need for urban infill with the desire to preserve amenity and sustain vibrant communities. The WAPC strategic plan promotes the importance of robust design review and assessment processes in order to improve design quality of the built environment. I'm therefore imploring you to heed the independent advice of the highly experienced built environment professionals who make up your state design review panel. They advise that the design approach is not supported on the basis that the proposed bulk and scale of the development is not appropriate for the location given the year-round negative impacts on the character, amenity and viability of Napoleon Street, an important high street of the area. They raise concerns over the design's performance against 7 out of 10 of the design principles and urge further consideration on 2 others. The report before you agrees on these points, but suggests as it's located in a transit-orientated location, it warrants sufficient scale commensurate to the hierarchy of this town centre. I refer to the State Planning Policy 4.2 Activity Centres hierarchy, which lists Cottesloe as a district activity centre. Typical urban form characterised by mid-rise buildings, preferred residential dwelling types are medium-rise apartments and townhouses, with an average residential density being 35 per 800 to 1200 metres where close to a train station. So while infill developments are needed to contribute to the strategic housing targets, a 10-storey development could easily meet the target density set by the State Planning Policy 4.2 and would therefore surely represent the upper limit of development scale warranted and commensurate for this location. An attempt to find precedent by suggesting that the Cottesloe Village precinct is similar urban context to the high-density city of Subiaco fails. That's like saying a Chihuahua is similar to a Great Dane. It isn't a Metronet station, and a quick glance at a street map shows the whole Cottesloe Village precinct would probably fit 15 times over into the town centre area of Subiaco. Subiaco Centre is full of bulky, mid-height and larger apartment and office blocks. Cottesloe Village is made up of tiny lots with barely a 3-store building on it. In summary, the Commission is required to ensure proposed developments would not have an adverse impact on amenity and to give consideration to the matters raised in submissions. Over 90% of the over 700 public submissions did not support the bulk and height of the development. Both Cottesloe and Peppermint Grove councils also object on these and other grounds, and the state's own experts on the State Design Review panel do not support the application on grounds of excessive scale, leading to year-round negative impacts on the amenity of the area. Your report agrees these could be reasons for the application not to be supported. Further, Cottesloe can't credibly be compared to Subiaco or other similarly large urban centres for precedent justifying significant departures from the planning framework. Most pertinently, the proposed 17-storey design far exceeds the state's own guidance given in the State Planning Policy 4.2 for district activity centres. It would be in contradiction to the state's planning reform strategy that puts good design at the heart of all planning and development, and remiss of the Commission to ignore the significant negative impacts on amenity outlined by the experts. I ask you therefore to refuse approval of this proposal, which diverges so far from the state's own planning framework. Finally, if you'll allow me quickly, a height limit of 10 storeys is already a huge departure from the R codes in this area. However, it would achieve the desired infill rate for a district activity centre. It could positively, not negatively, impact businesses on Napoleon Street by not shadowing and still reinvigorating the area, with economic stimulus brought by new dwellings and a considerable number of retail and food outlets. Its scale would also integrate better with the future vision of the precinct, encompassing the heritage-listed Albion Hotel next door and future surrounding developments, which are unlikely to be taller than 3 stories due to small lot size. Amenity of all areas could then be retained or improved. With a 10-storey limit, everyone wins. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Before you go, we'll see if members do have any questions for you, if that's okay. Thank you very much. Members, any questions for Carolyn? No? Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you.
The next deputation this afternoon is from Ken Perry. Good afternoon, Ken. Over to you when you're ready. Thank you.
I wonder whether I could have just my PowerPoint slide up. That's all I need.
We can certainly attempt to arrange that for you.
That's what I requested, yeah. By the way, gee, that was a good presentation.
Mr Perry, I just think for future purposes, I don't believe that a cartoon really constitutes a deputation submission. It really does require words that are pertinent to the application before us.
I operate in 4 dimensions. So I thought it was appropriate. While that's occurring, because everybody has seen it, I am prepared to start.
We've
doesn't
accepted
come
it
up-
on this occasion, so I'm happy for it to be shown, but just in terms of future submissions, we would prefer something that is relevant to the application before us.
I hear what you would prefer.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you again. It's pretty obvious from the cartoon what I believe the issue is all about. It's about balance. And you'll notice in my positive reaction to some of the SDAU report that I congratulate them on coming along part way. They're stumbling, but they're coming along. Unfortunately, their analysis is biased by the implicit biases in the system. Therefore, I want to call my little presentation today on balance, because throughout the SDA report, they continually make judgments on balance without providing you, the commissioners, any way in which you can actually measure the balance. The project has implicit development incentives or development bonuses, whichever you wish to call them, and I've produced a guesstimate of these being worth somewhere between 40 and 50 million, a very large amount of money. Against this, we have a series of so-called community benefits, one of which is the public art contribution. Let me just say a couple of things about public art contributions. They're a simple tax on development to provide a gift to artists. I don't think that in this particular case, the $1 million would always occur with a compliant building. And I noticed that the SDAU this time has been very careful not to use the word non-compliant. So, you know, there's learning going on. The $1 million would apply to a compliant building. It doesn't occur as an incremental community benefit, nor do most of the other things which are community benefits. So on the seesaw, what you've got is very, very little to offset 40 or 50 million. Just over the road, earlier today at the MyDate meeting, they considered, and probably no doubt approved, a 34 stories tower in Stirling Street, Perth, with a 5.9 plot ratio. It complied. It complied. They had a 50% design bonus plot ratio because it met the criteria which had been established. It was not a rezoning. It was a worthwhile project, and I presume it was approved for that reason. And contrast this with the current one, a 6.6 plot ratio. You've got to be joking. 6.6 in Cottesloe. But I don't think that the Shire of Peppermint Grove, the town of Cottesloe, the town planning officers, the SDRP and the overwhelming public community input, it doesn't support the scale and height of this enterprise. The developer has 5 possibilities after rejection. CRIDA to overturn the decision, that's their right.
Mr Perry, you can have 30 seconds more and then the deputation will finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A redesign to fit the guidelines, as was mentioned previously, 8 to 10 stories, the 3-plot ratio seems to be sensible. Agree to pay $40 million or some other agreed feature to the councils instead of the community benefits, or apply for, my favourite, and help with a rezoning of the area. Then you've got a proper process.
Thank you, Mr Perry.
And hence my suggestion that you decline this proposal. Thank you for your time.
The next deputation this afternoon is from Alastair Patterson. Good afternoon. afternoon, Alistair.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I've been a Cottesloe resident for 25 years, but I'm here today on behalf of a wider group called Cottesloe Independent, a grassroots community group that was formed in 2024 and grew to a couple of hundred members interested in looking at solutions to pressing community concerns on a range of issues and pertinent to today's submission. These include better community consultation, evidence-based policy, informing development and sustainable planning and development. During the state election, Cottesloe Independent door-knocked over 9,000 doors in the Cottesloe electorate, including Cottesloe and Peppermint Grove, obviously. And we listened to people at all of those doors, the ones that were home, and we logged those conversations. And without doubt, the most common concern that we heard was about planning. People want to feel improved transparency in decision-making, and the community wants to feel consulted and listened to. So in brief, our submission details overwhelming community opposition to the development as it stands, the unacceptable height and overshadowing issues, and lack of transparency in the approval process. So some key points to take from it. Cottesloe Independent absolutely echoes the town of Cottesloe's objections. We feel conditional approval to this development undermines the town's strategic planning. Rather, a more holistic approach, as detailed in the Cottesloe Village Precinct Plan, should be followed. On height, the proposed height of 17 stories is inappropriate. Only 9% of respondents gave unqualified support to this proposal. This is remarkably unpopular, yet it is recommended to proceed. 80% of respondents do not want the development as proposed to proceed in Cottesloe. 17 stories is detrimental and overbearing, both iconic streets like Napoleon Street and the heritage-listed Albion Hotel. The fact is that the stakeholders consulted in this process, including the state's own design review panel, nearly all felt the design approach of bulk and size is detrimental. On transparency and due process, the town of Cottesloe has sought best practice input from experts, yet the precinct plan has not been considered. The process being followed appears unfair and unusual and flawed. After over 400 days of review, stakeholders have been given just about a week to respond to today's meeting. So in conclusion, it seems inconceivable that a 17-storey proposal has been considered, given that the WAPC's own executive summary for today actually seems to argue against that approval. So what's going on here? Up to 90% of the community reject 17 stories. Cottesloe Independent believes in good planning. However, we stand against the development application as it currently stands. The people of Cottesloe deserve better.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Before you go, I'll just see whether there are any questions for you from members.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bennett?
Sure.
Thank you for the deputation.
I can hear you.
It should.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in Cottesloe Independent. So when you say you're door knocking, are you door knocking just Cottesloe residents in the town of Cottesloe, or I'm just mindful of how close this is to the border
Yes.
for other local government areas?
So we formed it for the state election.
Yep.
So the seat of Cottesloe runs from North Fremantle to City Beach and includes parts of Claremont as well. But we obviously door knocked in Peppermint Grove as well as Cottesloe, including all the streets on that side of the railway line quite intensely as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything further, members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next deputation this afternoon is from the town of Cottesloe, and we welcome Deputy Mayor Melissa Harkins, Paul Nielsen, Mark Newman, Steve Cleaver and Ed Druitt.
Welcome all.
And your PowerPoint presentation has been shared. I do understand that you have a video as part of your presentation this afternoon, so we've added that to the final slide of your presentation. So at whatever point in time you want to move to that video, then please let us know. Over to you when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the panel. I'm here today representing the Mayor of Cottesloe, who is unable to attend, and I speak on behalf of the Cottesloe community. While my remarks reflect the views of local residents, they are also relevant to the broader public who regularly visit and enjoy the unique character of the Cottesloe village. The town planning team will cover the technical aspects of the proposal. My role is to convey the views and concerns of the community. These views have been clearly expressed through public submissions. Less than 9% giving unqualified support for this development. 70% opposed it and 20% supported it with changes. Of those supporting it with changes, the majority wanted the height kept to a maximum of 10 stories to minimise impacts on Napoleon Street. That means that at least 80% of residents did not support this development due to the impact of overshadowing on the character of the village. The community acknowledges that Station Street is an appropriate location for increased density. In fact, that recognition has driven our work with the Shire of Peppermint Grove on developing a precinct structure plan for the village. This precinct plan was intended to guide future development in a way that benefits both residents and visitors. The plan represents best practice and is a comprehensive reflection of the community's views and desires. The PSP identifies 10 stories as the maximum height this area can sustain without causing serious negative impacts on the character and amenity of our high street, particularly in terms of overshadowing. Comprehensive consultation conducted by the town revealed a shared vision, support for thoughtful infill development that retains the character and atmosphere of Napoleon Street, a much-loved hub of local cafes, shops and public life. Protecting its blue sky outlook and avoiding overshadowing is a priority for our community. The most frequent and strongest objection raised has been the overshadowing impact of the proposed 17-storey development impact on Napoleon Street, the heart of the village. We have listened to our community and worked to find a balance, supporting increased vibrancy and housing without sacrificing what makes Cottesloe Village special. However, this proposal at 15 and 17 stories far exceeds the 10-storey threshold that our community and indeed planning principles deem appropriate. It's important to understand that the unique village feel of Napoleon Street cannot be replicated elsewhere, not on Station Street. Once it's lost, it's gone forever. Your own officer's report acknowledges the significant negative impact this development would have on Napoleon Street and the village character. The state's own design review panel echoed this concern, stating, and I quote, "The proposal is not an appropriate scale for the location, given the year-round negative impacts on the character, amenity and viability of Napoleon Street, the primary high street of the area and the heart of Cottesloe Town Centre." Your officer's report also notes that a series of workshops facilitated by the department and attended by the proponent examined ways to address overshadowing. A compromise emerged, a development of up to 14 stories on Station Street, tapering down to 10 streets at the southern boundary. This approach would mitigate the impact on Napoleon Street, and a supporting diagram was produced. However, the applicant ultimately chose not to pursue that compromise and instead submitted the current design, featuring towers of 15 and 17 stories. Even the officer's report, at best, gives lukewarm support to this proposal. For example, I quote, "The plans could be considered to generally address the design principles of the R codes. However, the building height and plot ratio remain significant departures from the framework." The officer goes on to say, ultimately, if the Commission is satisfied that the proposal does not result in unacceptable adverse impacts on the amenity of surrounding properties or the locality, it is recommended that the application should be approved. I believe we have drawn to your attention that the proposal does result in unacceptable adverse impacts. On behalf of the people of Cottesloe and the wider community who value this vibrant and iconic precinct, I urge you to reject the proposal in its current form. Thank you.
I'd just like to, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'd like to build on those comments from the Deputy Mayor. And,
I might just suggest if you just move it really close, that will just help with online as well. If you move the microphone as close as possible.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. I'd like to just build on those comments from the Deputy Mayor and just work our way through some of the planning that has been undertaken for the area. So I wonder if we could start with slide 1, please. So the town and the Shire of Peppermint Grove are preparing a comprehensive local planning framework for the town centre culminating in the draft precinct plan, which the Mayor has just referred to, Deputy Mayor has just referred to, and an associated scheme amendment, series of scheme amendments.
Paul, sorry, we're just...
Yes.
Are we ready now with the PowerPoint? They were having some trouble with screen sharing, so we've just paused your timer. Just if everyone, just for your awareness, we don't normally meet in this room and we've had to get a third-party AV support to come in, so we are not normally broadcasting from this meeting and using specialist equipment today, so we're having a few little technical issues along the way, so thank you for your patience.
Are we able to go back to slide 1? Brilliant. Yeah, no, thank you. This illustrates the work undertaken on the precinct plan for the town centre to date. It's a holistic planning approach. It's guided by the Commission's structure planning framework. It preserves and enhances Napoleon Street High Street character, which is the active heart of this village precinct. It encourages height, but in a planned and considered way, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. This proposed development application in front of the Commission at the moment doesn't align with this precinct plan and, in our view, significantly undermines this planning process for the town centre, which both local governments have been progressing. Next slide, please. The precinct planning has carefully considered a graduation of height and scale across the village. Proposed heights vary from 2 storeys on the periphery to 16 storeys at key landmark locations. For instance, Cottesloe Central. So height is something that has been considered as part of the precinct plan in the right locations. The design seeks to protect solar access to Napoleon Street, to enhance and promote its growth and its long-term amenity. And we have scheme amendments that seek to include provisions that enable this. The department's own design review panel, in fact, has strongly supported this design principle to protecting Napoleon Street as a high street and avoiding overshadowing. So it's a principle that has found support with the design review panel as well. Next slide, please. Overshadowing in particular. So the town's modelling demonstrated that 10 storeys on the southern side of Station Street and 2 storeys on the northern side of Station Street was the height limit over which shadow was cast on the southern side of Napoleon Street. Again, the design review panel agreed in its report that the amenity of Napoleon Street tenancies will be compromised by the overshadowing and visual dominance of the proposed towers. It strongly advised that the scale of the towers should be reduced to avoid negative impacts on Napoleon Street. The department staff, in fact, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, sought to find alternatives with the applicants to address overshadowings, and you can see that some design options were considered. But the proponent appears to have ignored these overtures and chose to persist with the current height, despite the design review panel's recommendation and the attempt by the department's officers to look at alternative suggestions. Next slide, please. The town has been provided with a simulation by a community member, which we felt was important to show the Commission. Now, we haven't vetted this simulation, but it does align with, the shadowing does align with a lot of the applicant's shadowing diagrams as well. But this simulation just illustrates the scale and bulk of the development and the shadow across Napoleon Street, reminding the panel that this is an east-west main street, as opposed to a lot of north-south main streets you'll see across the Perth metropolitan area. And north-south, you tend to get sunlight during the day at different times. East-west, these sorts of impacts can be achieved. So this is midwinter, winter solstice modelling and simulation. Next slide, please.
I do believe that was your last slide in the PowerPoint. Oh no, there is, sorry, more. Sorry.
Okay. So in terms of built form, the scale, the massing, the height, the development will be overbearing for the locality in our view, and it will have a detrimental visual impact on the Albion Hotel, which is immediately adjoining. The design review panel agreed again with this position of the town and its report, and advised that it wasn't supported on the basis of bulk and scale being inappropriate for its local context. So finally, I just wanted to raise some other concerns that the town has. The application is heavily reliant on conditions with limited information about the revised stormwater management approach, and there's been no agreements or serious discussions with the town about works in the adjacent public realm. The proposed public art contribution doesn't make provision for a contribution of 1% of the value of the development, as far as we can see. There's the loss of 13 bays in Station Street, which weren't considered as part of the parking calculations, and we are not supportive of the applicant's request to amend proposed condition 8. Thank you.
And if I could just sum up, it is unfortunate that the timing of yesterday's strategic
just to know, even we did pause, so you have reached the 10 minutes, so if you could, I will allow it, but if you could just be brief, that would be helpful.
I've got,
thank you.
Yeah, it just is unfortunate that the timing of yesterday's meeting, we don't know the result of what happened yesterday. A lot of work's gone into this plan over the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of cooperative work, I have to say, which you don't often see in local government. So that is a bit disappointing. We would just say we would like one of two things. Either the application be refused, or at least defer it to allow the CVPSP to actually be properly considered and advertised.
Thank you very much for your deputation. I will now go to questions from members. Members, are there any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Move this a bit closer. I just had a couple of questions and just related to the PSP as well. So firstly, the simulation that you showed is interesting, and perhaps ask Paula to clarify around some of the accuracies around that. But I am interested in understanding through the PSP the height that's shown on the north side of Napoleon Street, if there was any shadowing modelling that was done on what that would look like on the south side, potentially excluding any of this development. So if you have three or four stories in the PSP, what does that do to the south side of Napoleon Street under the precinct structure plan?
The precinct plan was looking to limit the height of built form on the northern side of Napoleon Street to 2 stories. And that, part of the shadow modelling for shadows, that ensured that the shadow from the northern side of Napoleon Street didn't overshadow on the south side. So as well as south side of Station Street being 10 stories as that point, it was 2 stories on the northern side of Napoleon Street, and the precinct plan and proposed scheme amendment for this this precinct, which was actually considered by the SPC yesterday, yes. Was looking to control that and manage that height.
Thanks, Paul. And so just to follow on from that, in preparing the PSP, were other scenarios considered in terms of height through there? I know that it was shown as 10 stories. Was there modelling done to look at taller, slender towers? Were other alternatives considered for the Station Street precinct?
Hame Charlie did do different different types of modelling. I think the emphasis of the modelling was mainly to understand at what height shadows were cast on the southern side of Station Street. So they might. I don't think that there was any specific built form modelling higher than around about 10 stories.
Sure. Chair, may I ask one more question quickly? So I appreciate the concept plans that you've shown that looks at potential development opportunities through the town with the height. There is a lot of fragmented ownership along and very small lots along Napoleon Street and throughout the town centre. This is one of the few sites that's quite consolidated. I'm interested to know from the town's perspective, are you expecting to see proposals where there's aggregation of land ownership through there? What opportunities, I guess it's about the reality of seeing that development outcome when you've got that fragmented ownership, which can be quite challenging, particularly on the narrow sites.
Yeah, as part of our preparation of the precinct plan, we did a land use analysis, which included looking at the potential for land amalgamations and lot amalgamations. Hamish did a lot of work on that, looking at land capability. And yeah, there were a number of sites across the precinct that may lend themselves to amalgamations over time, and the potential then for greater bulk and scale of built form.
Sure.
So yeah, that work was undertaken.
Thank you. That's it from me.
Members? Just a question from me, perhaps, Paul, I don't know if you want to take this question. Just in terms of the report, it does talk to some of the potential benefits that the development would bring to the town, and I point to one example, the 128-bed hotel. Do you see things like that adding to the amenity of the area, adding to the amenity of Napoleon Street from the perspective of bringing more vitality and customers into the town? Is that something that's been considered?
Yeah, I think the town's local planning strategy talks about the expansion within the town of tourism and different opportunities for different types of accommodation within town. So the inclusion of a hotel is something that probably aligns with the broader intent of the local planning strategy in terms of providing a range of opportunities across the town for accommodation.
Okay, thank you. Members, any further questions? Thank you very much for your deputation.
The next deputation this afternoon is from Matthew McNeely and Dan Lees.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. So I'll go first. Thank you, Chair and members, for the opportunity to speak today. We're here not simply to present a development application. Instead, we're here to share a vision for the Cottesloe Town Centre. A town centre that has, until now, remained under-realised. Full of charm, yes, but ready to evolve. We see the potential to reawaken Station Street into something extraordinary. A lively neighbourhood that pulses with local life, civic energy and the unmistakable spirit of Cottesloe. We aren't trying to take that spirit away. We are here to embrace it and unlock it for more people to enjoy. Over $200 million will be invested into this precinct. That's a bold vote of confidence in Cottesloe's future, and we recognise that kind of ambition can be confronting. Being the first often is, but we've done it before. In Fremantle CBD, we led the renewal of Walyallup Court, once doubted, now celebrated. The same opportunity exists here. Change takes courage. It asks us to imagine not what is, but what could be. To look at a familiar streetscape and think of all of the opportunities. We believe Cottesloe deserves that kind of imagination. It deserves to evolve in a way that honours its coastal casualness while becoming a more complete place. A place that's active and celebrated every day of the week, a place that is welcoming of not just residents but of visitors, a place that is a demonstration to the rest of Australia and the world that West really is best. We're not here to copy what's been done elsewhere, we're here to create something uniquely Cottesloe, where sandy feet and boutique hotel stays coexist, where landscape laneways lead to the much-loved, as we have heard today, shops of Napoleon Street, local favourites and new hospitality heroes, a pedestrian-friendly precinct that invites you in and rewards you for staying. This will be a 7-day, 18-hour economy designed for people, for locals, for visitors, for the Cottesloe of today and tomorrow. Which brings me to the people of and governing body of the town of Cottesloe. Despite their interpretation of opposition to this development application, there is a quiet but firm ambition emerging in Cottesloe that tens of thousands of residents and visitors are seeking more from our very special oceanside suburb. And so they should be. We should all expect more. Cottesloe urgently needs and deserves more infrastructure and amenity in each of its precincts, particularly the town centre. And this project addresses just that. In fact, it aligns with the town's own draft village precinct plan, which already contemplates the height and scale we are proposing in this very location. We note the town are also landowners of 2 prominent sites on Station Street. What happens next with those sites will also shape the future character and utility of the town centre. Will it simply be more car parking, or perhaps something much more ambitious? We're keen to be part of the conversation, whatever direction they choose, because we're investing for the long term. So today, I ask that you see beyond the plans and renders before you and embrace the spirit of what's being proposed. We're proud that this proposal aligns with the broader state government-led movement of precinct renewal across Perth, from Subiaco to Leederville to Bayswater, all the way to the airport, connecting through Metronet. And I posit, if density not here, a few steps from the train, close to shops, cafes, services and the coast, being bang smack in the middle of a town centre, away from low-density residential areas, then where? In summary, our proposal has been carefully developed over several iterations and many years. Our focus is on providing a world-class layered precinct filled with coastal culture and the highest of hospitality. It's time to imagine more for Cottesloe, and we hope with your support we can begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And good afternoon, Commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of this transformative opportunity for the Cottesloe Town Centre. This proposal comprises a significant transit-oriented development that is aligned with the state government's Metronet agenda. This proposal embodies the town of Cottesloe's own objectives to revitalise the town centre precinct, along with state-level strategic planning objectives in relation to infill development and increased density within an identified activity centre, particularly one anchored by a train station. This proposal can serve as both a catalyst and a design benchmark for the broader redevelopment of the Cottesloe Town Centre. The scale of this proposal is appropriate on this specific site and is capable of being delivered here on what is the largest privately owned land parcel within the Cottesloe Town Centre. We applaud the town and the neighbouring shire of Peppermint Grove for jointly progressing the precinct planning so as to appropriately recognise the amenity offered by this established town centre. Our firm, on behalf of this proponent, as well as the previous landowner, have been engaging with the town since 2018 in seeking to progress a contemporary planning framework so as to contemplate a mixed-use development on this site. We do note the Station Street placemaking strategy from 2017 and the various iterations of the Cott Village Precinct Plan from 2019 through to the current draft precinct structure plan. All of these documents point to a recognition by the town and the state government of the strategic value of this precinct, and a broad acknowledgement that taller buildings are appropriately located within this town centre, and various iterations of the draft structure plan have identified 16-storey buildings within the town centre. The town's draft local planning strategy includes a key focus on ensuring that the intensification of land uses principally occurs within the town centre, encouraging an increase in density and diversity of housing to accommodate a more diverse population and to support an ageing population. It also supports growth in local employment and tourism activity. And finally, promoting the Cottesloe District Centre as the primary node of activity, attracting locals, visitors and a diverse range of businesses. All of this speaks to a maturing consideration of taller buildings in contextually appropriate locations. This has been reflected in multiple recent planning decisions by both the WAPC and the Development Assessment Panel across metropolitan Perth. As for the state planning framework, this proposal presents an opportunity to deliver 125 of the 970 additional dwellings required by the sub-regional framework in an appropriate location and in a built form that aligns with the contemporary activity centre planning principles. This in turn will relieve potential pressure on otherwise out of context infill development within the established residential suburb of Cottesloe, which is predominantly characterised by detached single houses with significant tree canopy cover. This building is contemporary in its design and in the mix of uses that it comprises. The future apartment residents, the hotel guests, the staff and the patrons of the retail and hospitality offerings in their day-to-day comings and goings will inject more life into Cottesloe. They will ensure the enduring success of Napoleon Street as a retail main street, as well as increase rail patronage during peak as well as off-peak periods, and make much better use of Cottesloe Station, which is literally only metres away. This proposal will also deliver a much-needed streetscape upgrade to the adjacent length of Station Street, providing a high-quality public realm befitting of a town centre, as well as to continue to provide the mid-block through-site pedestrian link between Station Street and Donardi Lane, and then further through to Napoleon Street via neighbouring properties. Respectfully, the Commission's approval today is requested, but with changes to conditions 8 and 25. I've provided rationale for these in my deputation request form, but I will touch on these briefly. Condition 8 requires an easement for the through-site pedestrian link, which we support in principle. However, our request is that the words "to the satisfaction of the WAPC" be inserted at the end of the second last sentence. We would also request that parts A, B and C are moved into an advice note, so they sit in an advice note and not in the condition. As for condition 25, part A, this deals with public art. This project includes a $1 million public art spend. We do not propose to spend $2 million on public art, as has been recommended, which is in the conditions before you, which is based simply on applying the Town of Cottesloe's local planning policy, which is uncapped. Having regard for other local government public art policies, many of these are capped. Looking nearby at the Town of Claremont and the Town of Cambridge, both of these local government public art policies are capped at $500,000. My deputation request form also makes reference to the Department of Finance's public art policy for government buildings and some public works projects. Our position is that a $1 million public art spend is a significant contribution to the public-facing art offering of this project, as is reflected in the public art strategy, which is agenda attachment number 11. This ought to be considered in the context of the significant public realm streetscape upgrades that this project also proposes. So in closing, this building is entirely appropriate in its context, and it can serve as both a catalyst and a design benchmark for the broader redevelopment of the Cottesloe Town Centre in alignment with both local and state government objectives. Your approval today is respectfully requested, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Matthew and Dan, for your deputation. I will go to questions, but perhaps I could just kick off with the key issues that have been raised with us through consultation and today, which go to height, bulk and overshadowing. And we have heard today from the town in relation to their draft precinct structure plan and the 10 stories proposed. And in the report before us, we've also had the 14-storey assessment that was looked at one point during the assessment process. So I would be interested in your views as to why you've landed where you have, and then some further commentary from you in relation to the overshadowing to Napoleon Street.
Certainly. You kick off. I think this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity here. I think it would be a lost opportunity if this site were developed to 10 stories, purely on the basis of the overshadowing outcome that certain parties believe is appropriate. We do not believe that preventing any overshadowing to the southern side of Napoleon Street is an appropriate or necessarily desirable outcome in a district-level activity centre. A number of scenarios were tested, and I think that's reflected in the fact that prior to the Hames Charlie draft precinct structure plan. The town of Cottesloe also had engaged Hatch Roberts Day, who prepared an earlier body of work, the 2023 draft concepts, I believe they were referred to as. This contemplated a range of different building heights on a range of different properties across the activity centre. In terms of the overshadowing in more detail, that was tested, a number of scenarios were tested both with the State Design Review Panel and in some follow-up sessions with the acting government architect. We've arrived at the solution that we have because this makes the best opportunity of this site in its town centre context. A detailed body of work was done with respect to the shadow impacts. It's quite neatly summarised in the officer's report, and looking at the period between the 15th and the 30th of June, solar access is still provided for periods of between 1.5 to 4 hours. So I think it was simply to say that to accept absolutely no shadowing whatsoever on the southern side of Napoleon Street is really not an outcome that we think is befitting of a district level activity centre.
Thank you. Anything further to add in relation to the 14-storey option that was included in the report before us?
Again, that was considered a lost opportunity in terms of the size of this property and its location within the Cottesloe Activity Centre.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add to that. I think concur with everything that Dan has said. There is an element of commercial viability that is instilled in going with the bigger buildings. I think the lost opportunity we would all regret in future when the town of Cottesloe evolves, the town centre actually evolves. There are other big buildings built in there. We probably look back at that and we've seen examples of that across Perth in the past, so we don't want to make that same mistake again. And then the only other thing I'd note is there are a series of, in terms of the overshadowing, there are a series of fixed permanent shade structures that sit on the southern side of Napoleon Street, trying to shield people from the sun. So it's an unusual sort of, not quite sure what the right term is, but it's unusual in so much as it is only for a very short period of time during the year that there is overshadowing.
Thank you. I'll go to other members for questions now. Members? Commissioner Bennett?
Thanks, Chair. And thanks both for the deputation. So just to follow on from the Chair's question around the height and the other alternatives, and to just go to my question earlier, were other height options considered in terms of a taller, more slender tower rather than a kind of blockier design?
A blockier design was considered, and that was not considered as a desirable outcome from a built form and an architectural perspective. Given the feedback that we received on that scenario testing, as well as this particular built form outcome, there was really no encouragement to test a even taller and more slender building. And I think we've arrived at a height that we feel is comfortable for this town centre context, and also having regard for the draft precinct planning that has been done, which itself, and as the town has presented, has identified some opportunities for 16-storey development potential on other sites within the broader town centre and on the other side of Stirling Highway.
Yeah. May I ask a follow-up question? Thank you. So just to shift away from the height conversation, you've identified a number of non-residential uses on the ground plane, which is really great, and also the potential hotel use as well, which is a good outcome. I'm just interested to know, just in terms of viability, likelihood, tenant secured, market interest, and one of the considerations for the Commission is the economic kind of stimulus side of things. Are you able to provide some commentary around that for those non-resi uses?
Yep, so I can do that. So clearly, it is curious against the backdrop of perceived opposition to the project, but we have a very long list of potential buyers who have already expressed interest in buying apartments in that location, off the back of really just this process, without us actually being able to show anybody anything, which tells me there is a lot of pent-up demand I think both from a downsizing and also a younger demographic looking to stay in and around that location who currently don't have product able to offer them, so they're having to move out of the Cottesloe suburb. The hotel, high occupancy rates in hotels, they're not easy to make economically viable, but we're a big believer that in that location we will be able to create a very special hotel product, a luxury lifestyle, 5.5-star type product, which will be very complementary to the residential as well. So there's a lot of synergies and symbiosis that works between the two. The big focus for us, though, is really what happens at the ground plane. In part, that'll be hotel bleeding down to the ground plane, but we see a really strong mix of F&B and potentially other opportunities in and around that precinct. One of the things we are looking at is the whole of the Cottesloe Town Centre. So we're not trying to change kind of how it currently works. We're not trying to change Napoleon Street. We're trying to actually embrace it and improve it. And if you go and door knock the retailers along Napoleon Street, they're not all going that great. Yeah. So there is this opportunity, I think, to bring a lot more vibrancy to the town centre, which will support those businesses and also the businesses that sit within the land that we're developing.
Thank you. That's it from me.
Members, any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Hall.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I'm just interested to hear your experience with the design review panel and your perspective on that process, please.
Let me address that. So a number of iterations, so over a very long period of time. So we've been in this process for a number of years. We ultimately landed, I think, with our proposal back in September last year, was this latest submission. And then we've been through a number of iterations with the design review panel. It was quite clear to me that the focus was less on the design, and look, we've got a best-in-class, I would say even world-class team of architects involved in this project. So Architectus is the lead architect. We have a specialist retail architect involved, and of course we've got a specialist hotel architect as well, who will ultimately work with the hotel operator, the preferred operator. The difficulties, I think, that the State Design Review Panel had around our proposal were more to do with bulk and scale and context. And of course, context is interesting because when you look around the town of Cottesloe and all you see is 2 stories, it's pretty confronting to see a proposal for 17 stories. But when you think about the future of what Cottesloe is going to be, and there will be other tall buildings, and I appreciate what Commissioner Bennett spoke about in terms of the difficulty assembling sites within Cottesloe, but in time other developers will have a go and we'll see buildings on the other side of Station Street and on surrounding streets as well. It's about context, looking forward rather than the context in looking back. And I found that it was difficult to reconcile that with the SDRP. They seemed to wanted to share a view around, well, this is what Cottesloe looks like currently. Maybe we don't want it to change too much. So look, it's bold what we're proposing. I don't think it's any more bold than what's happening and what is proposed across a number of other town centres and in and around railway lines throughout the metro area. We've taken a lot of our lead from that. We're fully supportive of development around Metronet and existing railway stations. Dan alluded to it, Cottesloe train station's pretty quiet. So there's a lot of logic behind what we're proposing to do. I appreciate the SDRP's position around context, but I don't agree with it. And in terms of massing bulk and scale, I think, again, you can look to the future and this won't be the only big building in the town of Cottesloe.
Thank you. Commission members, anything further? Just probably because it's come up during deputations, I would like to give you the opportunity just to comment on the Albion Hotel and any impacts that you foresee there.
Certainly. That was something that we identified very early in this project, and our heritage consultant proactively reached out to the heritage team at Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage and sought their advice as to how they might consider this proposal. We shared a number of renders and massing studies with the heritage officers within DPLH, and no concerns were raised there. It was considered that there is sufficient breathing space, separation from the Albion Hotel and this project site, that there was no concern there in terms of the built form and scale sitting as a sort of mid-ground backdrop to the Albion Hotel. That was considered through a number of visualisations that were presented to them.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add to that? So one of the things we learnt from our experience in Fremantle is how much of a catalyst a development like this can be. And look, I don't know when you last visited the Albion Hotel, but it's not in the greatest state of repair. I'm hopeful that this will encourage the Albion and the owner of the Albion to actually invest in that property. I can only see it benefits for what we're proposing to do.
Thank you, members. Just a final call. Oh, Commissioner Adair, yes, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. And possibly a question for Dan. The current planning framework actually only allows 3 stories on this site. So I'm just curious, I mean, you're looking for a lot of discretion here, and I've heard all of the rhetoric around, you know, your future vision or the future vision of the developer for Cottesloe, but I'm interested in how you arrive at 17 stories being the appropriate height going forward. Why not 25? Why not 30? You know, like, why 17? I noticed in one of the reports, it did say that the height was chosen to maximise views to the river and to the ocean. So at what point, for those of us that have to apply discretion in considering this, how do you describe to me how you actually arrived at this height?
Thank you for the question. Very much aware of the position that the Commission is in when exercising discretion in considering this application and applications like this. Looking at the town of Cottesloe's own report of review on their current planning scheme, they found themselves that the current building height controls in their planning scheme for the town centre, which are 2 to 3 stories, are ill-equipped to provide for the increase in delivery of residential apartments that their draft local planning strategy calls for. So I think that there is readily acknowledged that the town's current planning scheme is dated, and it has non-discretionary height controls in there, which is why we've taken this proposal through this pathway. In terms of how we arrived at the 17 stories, one of the reasons why is, as you've observed, which is the views that are on offer to both bodies of water, the Swan River and the Indian Ocean. And reflecting back on the earlier question from Commissioner Bennett, you know, why not go even taller and more slender? I think we felt that this was about the right height for this site, having regard for design, for shadow, for the ability to provide a sufficiency of car parking to meet the market, but then also, in planning terms, having regard for the building heights that the town of Cottesloe and its consultants themselves had identified for this precinct, which, as I've mentioned, is 16 stories or thereabouts in the various iterations of the draft precinct structure plan and the draft concepts that were released in 2023, and in terms of where we are now with the draft prepared by Haynes Charlie in 2024, and also having regard for The fact that that document needs to go through its planning journey in terms of being publicly advertised and then being presented through to the Commission for a final decision and the Minister for Planning with respect to the associated scheme amendment. So who's to say where those documents will land in terms of building height? But the fact that the town itself and its consultants have arrived at 16 stories, we feel our proposal at 17 stories is comfortable and broadly consistent with that vision.
Commissioner Adair, anything further? No? Commissioner Bennett?
Sorry, just to dig into that a little bit more. So the scenario around the 14 and the 10 that was is mentioned in the report and discussed earlier as well, does that work for the project?
No. No. And look, just to add to what Dan said, I mean, we originally, I think our first scheme was back in 2021 on this property. So I guess over the last 3.5, 4 years, there's been a number of planning outcomes, precedents, if you like, may or may not be relevant, but if I look at Bayswater, if I look at Leederville, I look at West Leederville, I look at Subiaco, much taller buildings there, just up the road 500 metres, there's buildings that are bigger than what we're proposing in the town centre. It kind of, I guess, encouraged us to sort of set levels that we thought, okay, this is kind of where the state wants these railway transit-oriented precincts to be. So that was really what ultimately guided us to it, and also the commercial viability and the opportunity to bring a hotel to Cottesloe, which we saw as really significant public community benefit.
I might just add to Matt's answer there, the 14-storey scenario and looking at the diagram that's included within the body of the report, there's an element of, that's a scenario that has been tested or reverse engineered to say you could go to 14 stories with a tapered design for the uppermost tower levels so as not to cause any overshadowing on the southern side of Napoleon Street. Now, for the reasons that we've put forward, given the district activity centre context, we respectfully disagreed with the State Design Review Panel in terms of that being a sacrosanct urban outcome, that there could never be any overshadowing of the southern side of Napoleon Street.
Members, anything further? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your deputation today.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your deputations. That does conclude our verbal deputations for today, but I just wanted to note that we have received also 3 written deputations they are included in the agenda today, from 3 residents, all of whom are against the proposal today. So thank you to those residents also for submitting. I would now like to go to item 3, which is the presentation of key issues by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, and I welcome Paola de Perna, the Planning Director of the State Development Assessment Unit. Thanks, Paola.
Thank you, Chair. The $200 million proposal before the Commission today is for the redevelopment of lots 50 and 35 Station Street, Cottesloe. The proposal involves the demolition of the site's existing buildings and car park and construction of a new mixed-use development, including 125 residential apartments, 128-bed hotel and a range of commercial uses. What the Commission has before it today is to decide whether the application and the current design of the building have been able to adequately address the matters raised during the technical assessment of the proposal, design review and public submission and stakeholder consultation. While the Commission may not be bound by the requirements of the local planning framework, in accordance with Part 17 of the Planning and Development Act, it must have due regard to the submissions received during consultation and the matters as highlighted by the Chair in her opening. I highlight that the application has been presented to the Commission for determination as soon as practicable in accordance with the requirements of Part 17. While it has been some time since lodgement of the application, the Department has continued to actively progress the proposal, noting there were some periods of 350 and 33 days respectively following each design review session, where advice of the design review panel was being considered by the applicant. Public and stakeholder consultation was undertaken in accordance with the established process for Part 17. The stakeholder and public submissions have raised significant concerns regarding the proposed development. We have seen in the submissions and heard today that key focus areas have been on building height, bulk and scale, overshadowing impacts on Napoleon Street, and the design being out of character with the town centre setting, as well as traffic concerns. Consideration and assessment of this proposal has focused on these matters and details raised in submissions to ensure that they've been adequately captured. However, for clarity, the full content of all the submissions have been made available to Commission members, so members are not solely relying on the summary as outlined in the report. The Town of Cottesloe were consulted and not supportive of the application as detailed in their deputation today, and the matters raised by the town and public submissions have been considered in the agenda report. The assessment undertaken by the department and the report for the Commission consider a range of matters and the context of discretion being sought. I would like to highlight a couple of the key issues, commencing with building height and plot ratio. Concerns have been expressed that the proposed height does not fit in with the current context and character, and that it would negatively impact the streetscape and neighbouring properties. A number of submissions also highlighted that the development should not exceed 10-storey concept contemplated in the draft scheme amendment. In regards to the presentation of the overshadowing simulation as shown by the town, this is the first that it's been seen by the department's officers. It's not been validated and therefore unable to confirm as to its accuracy. While these and other comments relating to height are noted, the Commission could form the view that there is sufficient grounds and basis for which, these could form the view that they are sufficient basis for the Commission not to support the development. The assessment has considered the extent to which both the applicable existing statutory planning framework instruments as well as the proposal itself demonstrate alignment with the general purpose and intent of the scheme. It's considered the massing and location of the residential towers and the separation between the towers, providing some relief to reducing the impact and appearance of the development and the shadow cast to the building. Whilst the current guidelines do not provide any controls regarding overshadowing of the development on Station Street south to Napoleon, there are cross-sections and diagrams and building height controls to limit the upper floor setbacks. The requirement is consistent with the draft PSP, which maintains that building heights on the southern side of Station Street are to be restricted to maximise sunlight penetration on Napoleon Street south side between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. From August to April. The solar analysis that's been provided has been verified by the department, and there are periods in the middle of the year where the proposed development does cast a shadow on portions of Napoleon Street. However, it's been established for most of the footpath off the south side of Napoleon Street receives at least 2 hours of daylight, shadow-free, throughout the day during the winter solstice. The site's premium location and accessibility to high-frequency public transport and its provision of a range of housing option and commercial activities could be considered sufficient reasons for the Commission to depart from the current framework. The proposal involves a range of public realm upgrades that align with the Station Street placemaking strategy, and the applicant has indicated their agreement to negotiate proposed off-site community benefits with the town. Whilst these have been considered in the context of the proposal and discretion being sought, should the Commission consider these appropriate, a condition has been recommended to ensure suitable arrangements are made to progress and implement those works. I note that the town is not supportive of the initial strategy of the stormwater management for the Station Street Reserve. However, following consultation, an approach to managing stormwater has been revised, and it's intended for it to be captured on site to support the deep soil areas which have been increased. A condition to this effect has been recommended. In relation to comments made relative to conditions as contained in the agenda. The department has provided Commission members with responses to these matters, but I'd like to provide just some additional commentary in relation to the public art. I note the wording of the condition relating to public art was considered on the advice of the town's officers. The proposal seeks a contribution based on our local planning policy requirements, which speaks to a 1% contribution. Should the Commission seek to be explicit in the contribution amount, the condition could be modified to include reference to 1% of the estimated cost of development. The proposal does meet the threshold for the policy to apply, and under the principles of orderly and proper planning, there should be reason to depart from the policy framework, while noting that it should not be applied inflexibly. The value of the contribution is scalable to the context of the proposal, and the location of the site and the scale of the development have been identified as reasons for the condition to be included. That concludes the commentary, and open to answering any questions.
Thank you very much, Paola. Members, questions of Paola? No questions? Oh, right, Commissioner Hall, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And I did ask this question before the meeting about condition 9 and have seen the response, but I just wanted to ask again around condition 9 refers to plans date stamp 19th of March 2025. And I just wanted to get some clarity on exactly which of those plans, because the plans I see are date stamped the 16th of September 2024.
Through the Chair, apologies, the date should reference 2024.
So to clarify, the September date only?
Sorry, the reference should be to both sets of plans, so the September plans as well as the March plans.
So, Paola, it currently reads date stamp 16th of September 2024 and 19th of March 2025.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Commissioner Hall, anything further on that?
Yes, Chair. I can't actually see any plans date stamped 19th of March 2025.
Through the Chair, the modification relates to the basement plan. So there's only one plan in the set of plans that is date stamped March 2025. The remainder of the development plans themselves speak to the September date.
Perhaps you could give us a page number just to be absolutely clear.
Oh, I found it. Page 9.
Page 9. Thank you all. That's clarified. Anything
Yes,
further,
thank you.
Commissioner Hall?
No questions at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Over to Commissioner Santry.
Thank you. I just have a question in relation to the draft precinct structure plan that's proposed for the area. If that document was adopted, is that a discretionary document? It can't mandate heights or setbacks, etc.?
Through the Chair, the precinct structure plan would be a due regard instrument afforded unless otherwise there's references within the scheme which may reference to it as a schedule. However, as I understand at this point, it would be a due regard instrument.
Thank you. So just for clarity, discretion can be applied to those provisions in the event that precinct structure plan was adopted?
Through the Chair, as I understand, that's correct.
Thank you. And one other question, just in relation to the assessment against the R codes, just wanted to confirm that the application was seeking consideration under the design principles and therefore wasn't seeking discretion or variation, but rather consideration under that pathway?
Through the Chair, in regards, can I just seek some clarification in regards to building height specifically?
Yeah, so just to clarify, through the report where you've got the assessment under State Planning Policy 7.2, the R codes, Just wanted to confirm the consideration of those elements is in relation to the element objectives or the design principles of the document. And so therefore the application is not seeking a discretion or variation, rather consideration against those objectives.
Through the chair, the departures to those elements under the R codes have been identified for design principle assessment. In relation to building height, because building height is specified under the scheme, the assessment has been against the objectives of the scheme, in addition to the building height principles contained in the R codes for further guidance.
Understood regarding the height. Thank you for that.
Members, anything further? Yes, go ahead. Commissioner Shears.
Through the chair, thank you for your presentation, Paola. In terms of overshadowing, I know we've discussed that at length. Can you just clarify in terms of, I guess, the guidelines not providing any sort of strict requirements in terms of overshadowing, and then the commentary in the report saying there's sort of an absence of requirements, but the R codes have guided you in this space? Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Through the chair, the applicable guidelines and framework don't set a parameter as to a percentage or the amount of daylight hours that should be afforded to Napoleon Street in the current, in its current format. We note that it is intended in future to have those through the draft instruments. In the absence of those provisions being explicit and to then consider the potential impact. The R codes, we've looked at whilst this is not a residential amenity consideration, it is an amenity consideration. And if it was to be afforded a similar degree of amenity under the R codes, we've looked at the design principle outcomes relative to overshadowing to assist to make sure that there's quite a comprehensive and robust assessment relative to overshadowing.
One more question through the chair. In relation to Napoleon Street, currently under the planning framework today, it's correct to say that's 3 stories at this moment on the northern side of Napoleon?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Anything further, members? Commissioner Hall.
Thanks, Chair. My question relates to condition 25A. We heard from the applicant about the public art policy value. And I just wondered if there was a response in relation to some of the examples that were mentioned around capping of that amount and if that had been considered.
Through the chair, whilst other planning frameworks may speak to a variety of different standards, including capping, there wasn't a comprehensive assessment done of where that may exist in other jurisdictions. We have been guided by the policy as it currently applies to the development site with no cap applied to it. However, in the context of this application, as I outlined, we felt that given the scale of the development and its context, that it was considered appropriate. However, in saying that, it is open to the Commission to consider a lesser or modified value in the context of this proposal if it sees fit.
Thank you. And just one further question on the same topic. Has there been any research, or do we know if the town of Cottesloe has applied that same provision to other developments that are similar in nature recently?
As I understand through previous conversations, that the town has applied the public art contribution to other developments within the town. As to the frequency or the context of that application, that hasn't been interrogated to that extent, but the town may be able to provide a response.
Commissioner Hall, would you like a response from the town on that?
If it's possible and they're present, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Would the town be willing to answer that? Thank you. If you wouldn't mind grabbing a microphone, thank you.
Thank you very much. So just quickly, in regards to a similar site of similar scale, we had the Ocean Beach Hotel development, or redevelopment, which was considered through this same panel. And there it specifically explained that there was a 1% public art contribution requirement, which was put in the conditions. So that development The estimated development costs were approximately 220 million, and the 1% was applied. And there has been a number of other smaller developments where we would consistently apply that policy. We think it is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Members, any further questions of Paola? Okay, thank you all. Thank you very much, Paola, for your presentation to the board. That then brings us to the item itself. So we are now dealing with item 4.1, which is the Part 17 development application for the proposed demolition of 2 single-storey commercial buildings and construction of a mixed-use development at lots 50 and 35 Station Street in Cottesloe. Now, before the Commission today, we do have an SDAU recommendation for approval with conditions, and we also have an alternate motion for refusal. So, Commission members, I am in your hands now as to whether you would like to move the item as recommended or whether there is an alternate to come forward. Commissioner Sandry.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move the officer's recommendation as contained in the report.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bennett. Commissioner Sandry, do you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, please. Firstly, I would like to thank the deputations and the deputies who attended today to provide their insights into the development, alongside with all the written submissions that were made through the consultation period. I first wanted to touch on the key site considerations that I think are important as part of making this decision. The Cottesloe railway station is located 50 metres from this site, and it is on the Fremantle line, which now connects through to Claremont Station and Perth Airport Station, likewise with the CBD. In addition to that, there are a number of high-frequency bus routes located within 250 metres of this site along Stirling Highway. The site is located within an activity centre, which is identified as a district centre with a train station, so again being a station precinct as well, and it does also adjoin an urban corridor, which again is earmarked for high intensity development as well. So it is strategically located with respect to connectivity. It is also adjacent to a town centre and one that is admired by the local community. In terms of the current planning framework, it's clear that the town's scheme and guidelines in relation to the current height on the site, on the area I should say, being 3 storeys principally, is aged and dates back from 2014 and before. However, the state has moved on in terms of where it sees density in relation to transit-orientated development and key centres like this. I do note that there are draft frameworks in place with the draft local planning strategy, which is being considered alongside with the town's draft precinct structure plan. I would like to note that the local planning strategy sets the scene for a future scheme and sets those overarching objectives to really align with the state planning framework. And the draft precinct structure plan itself, it sets objectives in terms of what it wants to see in an area, but ultimately it is a due regard document whereby discretion can be applied in certain circumstances which align with the vision of an area. Turning to the development of this site, I think it's important to note we're talking about a genuine mixed-use development. It includes a range, being 125 apartments, which are 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedrooms, providing diversity in housing stock within this area, alongside a plethora of residential amenities for those future occupiers. But in addition to that, and which is quite unique in terms of mixed-use developments that we're seeing through the pathway, is a 128-bed hotel with pool and amenities, and that is in combination with the residential development. I think this is a key difference for this application in seeking consideration for the development. It provides an opportunity for tourism and access to a strategic area being Cottesloe within Western Australia. In addition to that, the ground floor plane offers substantial amenity through a mix of uses, and that will be available to current and existing residents alongside future residents and visitors to this town centre. Turning to what this pathway is, being Part 17, the Commission is the decision maker in this application, and we are required to consider it under the legislation and principally around 4 points. Firstly, being the local planning scheme. And in my opinion, based on the objectives and intent of that scheme, this proposal does satisfy those elements insofar as it provides housing choice and high levels of amenity. It enables a high level of access to transport options and also allows for increased accessibility across the site to be able to access that train station. It introduces increased activation at street level and also the laneway. The zoning of the town centre in itself is important. It seeks to improve amenity and provide a wide range of uses and opportunities for residential development, which this development does. Secondly, orderly and proper planning and the preservation of amenity is a consideration in which I have had to consider in making this decision. In considering this application, I think I have applied a logical assessment of the planning framework. I've considered what currently exists, what the drafts are, and where this development is strategically located in relation to transport, a town centre, and a tourism area of the state. With respect to preservation of amenity, this development actually does allow the preservation of amenity insofar as Napoleon Street is being untouched, and I'll speak to the overshadowing shortly. And it enables density to be delivered on a site that is unique given its size of the land holding, and there's not another similar site that can be replicated time and time again with respect to this development unless there is an amalgamation of sites in the precinct. Given the land holding and its size, it does have the ability to hold higher density development within proximity to the station. Thirdly, the need to facilitate development in response to COVID-19. And yes, COVID-19 was some time ago, but unfortunately we still feel the economic impacts of COVID-19. And this primarily relates to the provision of housing and accommodation. And this development is providing that. And it also provides accommodation for future visitors to Perth as well. The fourth element being any relevant state planning policy or relevant considerations by the Commission. An assessment has been undertaken against the R codes, which is a state planning policy, under the design principles. And I just wanted to make it clear that with respect to seeking consideration under the R codes, a development will be considered against the deemed to comply provisions and the design principles elements. A number of the matters that have been discussed within the officer reports is seeking consideration under those design principles or element objectives. And in my view, satisfy those provisions and has been outlined accordingly in the report. This site does respond to its context. It provides height that is commensurate to its location, being strategically located next to an urban corridor, a town centre, a high-frequency bus route and a connected train station. With respect to overshadowing to Napoleon Street, it's a great town centre, there is no doubt about it, and it will see a transition into a modern station precinct, becoming more vibrant with increased residents and visitors and creating an improved economic environment for local businesses and enable the longevity of those businesses in the locality. The impact of overshadowing during winter months is typically considered in a residential context, whereby users are often indoors during winter and the preservation of sunlight for periods of the day is important to an internal dwelling. However, in this instance, we are talking about a commercial town centre that is lined by awnings, providing shade to existing tenancies and existing buildings on the northern side already overshadowing part of the public domain. This development will not result in 100% overshadowing of Napoleon Street at all times. Yes, it will overshadow at times, but importantly, it will still allow solar access during periods of the day. Also, I would like to consider that during winter, those who are active in the public domain typically seek cover from rain, and conversely in summer will typically seek shade in the harsh sun. And this is an important element for consideration when we look at sunlight in town centres as well, but notwithstanding, there will still be sunlight. I would also like to touch on the State Design Review Panel comments. The SDRP is an advisory body and not a decision maker. And as a decision maker in this instance, being the Commission, I unfortunately have to respectfully disagree with the commentary provided in relation to some of the matters raised, as we must consider the future context of this area, the housing needs and the expectations of future generations. This is a development that will be in existence for decades, and we have to keep that in mind. It's not about providing housing right now, but also considering what the future generations want to be living in connected places and with such high amenities in proximity. It provides housing choice. So in summary, it is my opinion that this development should be supported, which is why I've moved the motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Sandry. I'll go to Commissioner Bennett now.
I think Commissioner Sandry covered it very thoroughly. I too have carefully considered the proposal, reviewed the report, the plans, submissions, and carefully considered the deputations today, as well as being out on site. I think the important thing for me, and just picking up on some of the comments that Commissioner Sandry made, is around the location and the suitability of this location for density. The consolidated site makes it very appropriate for an infill location, and the mix of land uses that are proposed and the fragmentation of the centre does make it challenging to deliver anything in the short term, although the centre will certainly evolve. Height and overshadowing certainly been a key theme today, and I've carefully considered the height in this context, as you'll have seen from the questions that I've asked today. The height in the centre, and I recognise the work that the town has done and the importance of keeping local planning frameworks, up to date and being useful in considering these sorts of proposals. And it could be considered that the proposal today is premature in the context of the local planning framework, but given the site's location and the suitability of density near a train station, and given also the housing challenges that we face at the moment, I do see it as a highly suitable location for this height. I have considered the overshadowing carefully too, and do agree that it's not appropriate to have no overshadowing on the south side of Napoleon Street. Solar access is maintained, and ultimately development will occur on the north side of Napoleon Street over time, and the centre will evolve. So given solar access is maintained, I'm comfortable with that. So on balance, I am comfortable with the application and prepared to second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. I'll go to Commissioner Adair.
Thank you, Chair. There's no question in my mind that this is, or I think in anyone's mind that this is station precinct, and greater density and intensity of development, including height, in the areas where the future is going. There's nothing to suggest that what is presented is a desired planning, built form and scale for future development and character of this area. I've heard nothing today and seen nothing in the report that supports that. The fact that this is the largest development site in the precinct, whatever is developed is likely to stand alone for quite some time. So I think we need to be very careful about in our consideration of what that will look like and the impact that it will have on the rest of the precinct for quite, whatever that duration is. All the plans and renders in the application, unfortunately, and rather skillfully avoid truly depicting the development in context and the actual scale comparison on the existing town centre. The mix of uses proposed and variety of housing opportunities is a welcome addition to Cottesloe, but for me it comes down to the scale, bulk and height. I think the town is doing what is expected in a planning sense. They've progressed a precinct structure plan and a scheme amendment based on modelling and the like, so evidence-based information. If this were not the case, then the application of discretion would become a lot more difficult for me. I see no reason not to support the efforts of the town in the work that it's doing, and it's appropriate that that is taken into consideration. I've been to the site and looked at it from various perspectives and distances. I'm also very pleased that Mr McNeely identified Leederville as a comparator. I also visited Oxford Street, where there's been a development behind the high street, such as the ABN building. That building's approximately 7 stories and sits quite comfortably in context with the lower scale of Oxford Street. Trying to imagine a further 10 stories on top of that building certainly leaves no room to question the absolute impact of height and scale. When we turn to preservation of amenity and proper and orderly planning, this development does not satisfy me that it meets these criteria, and I won't be supporting the application.
Thank you, Commissioner Adair. Commissioners, are there any further comments? Commissioner Shears?
Just quickly, I think most of the comments have been covered by Commissioner Sandry and Commissioner Bennett so far. I am going to support this proposal in front of us today. In considering the plans and all the information submitted, as well as all the submissions the Commission has been provided with, I do believe that it strikes an appropriate balance of locating density in an appropriate location, taking advantage of the train line, the corridor. This is exactly where we do want and need density throughout our city. With regards to the overshadowing, unfortunately, that can't be avoided, but I do believe that the applicant has taken every step possible to try and minimise that impact. Every proposal will have an impact. I believe the impacts associated with this development will be more in the positive rather than the negative. And for those reasons, I'll be supporting it today.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Hall.
Thanks, Chair. Look, yes, I acknowledge the concerns raised today, and that will gather through the consultation. However, I do think it is a very thoughtful design, a suitable location. I think it will positively contribute to the local area and help with housing, help with tourism and support local businesses. I would like to move that we amend condition 8 to modify as per the deputation that was put forward today.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Can I just clarify, we have two parts to that. There's the part to add to the satisfaction of the West Australian Planning Commission, and there's also a request to move parts A, B and C of the current condition 8 wording into advice note. Do you support both of those elements?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
I'm happy to second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bennett. Any dissent? That's carried. Thank you very much.
And if I may, Chair, I'd also like to move that condition 25A is amended to include a cap at $1 million.
Is there a seconder for this amendment? There is no seconder, so that one lapses. Thank you. Any further comments? I think it's just me. Look, so much has been said already, and I think it's really good to have a diversity of views on this, so I'd like to acknowledge all of the views of my colleagues put forward today. I have really appreciated that there has been a high public interest in this matter, a pretty high volume of submissions at 764, and note that 70% have been opposed to that, and that the main elements that have caused that are around the bulk, the scale and the overshadowing to Napoleon Street. It is not the easiest application to consider, given that the town has done significant work, and I would like to acknowledge the town in the work that you've done on your precinct plan. But I do think that there have been some really salient points put forward about this in terms of its location. It is a station precinct, it's the town's district centre, it's the highest order activity centre within the town. It is one of the opportunities to the town to realise that 970 additional dwellings that does need to be achieved by 2050. And I do agree that the hotel contribution is a really significant contribution to the town. It is an important tourist destination in itself in Cottesloe, and I think that there is demand for hotel accommodation within this area. As it's been discussed, it's incredibly well positioned in terms of its access to the station, to the urban corridor. It is a location that I think is really quite critical in terms of our consideration, the station precinct. Whilst this is not labelled a Metronet station, it must be said that government is taking a really strategic view of all station precincts across the network. All 83 stations are currently being assessed in terms of their ability to help us deliver against our density targets, which we are not able to currently achieve. So this will become something that becomes more important as we focus our desire to see an increase in density. In terms of the issues that have been highlighted, it is a unique infill site. I'd like to acknowledge that it is the largest freehold land holding within the activity centre, and that it is in this location a rare site, a unique infill opportunity. I do also want to talk about the shadow diagram presented by the solar analysis, which has been provided by the applicant, and to note that the department has reviewed the applicant's shadow diagram and does advise us that this isn't correctly reflected. It is important to note, I think that when I look at some of the community expression around Napoleon Street, and I totally understand that passion for the local high street, it's something that I've experienced in previous roles, where community loves that meeting place, and I think that is important, that sentiments come through strongly. But whether we should prevent an opportunity like this to preserve entirely overshadowing on one side of the street, I think that is in question, because I think it's important that when we talk about amenity, that we do have to acknowledge that the planning and development regulations define amenity to mean all of those factors which combine to form the character of an area and include the present and likely future amenity. So I do think it's impossible to separate overshadowing, and that's been analysed in terms of the degree of overshadowing from the amenity benefits that this development seeks to bring into the town centre. We've talked about the hotel, we've talked about the fact that there's a high quality ground plane, bringing new uses into the town centre. We've got that mid-block pedestrian linkage through the site. Great mix of hospitality coming in, and I think this is really important to also talk about what this does in terms of revitalisation for the centre and how that will support the existing businesses in the town centre. When you do talk to local businesses, particularly small retailers, it's an incredibly difficult market to survive in on a high street, and to bring that daily activity, that footfall into a town centre, tourism in particular, people who are on holiday, they are there to eat and enjoy themselves, they bring dollars into these local economies, and I think that needs to be part of what we look at when we look at the impact of this development. Just also to add that in terms of the infrastructure and service agencies, no objections, support here in terms of being able to service this development. And I also just want to note on the public art contribution, respectfully, Commissioner Hall, thank you for putting that forward. The reason why I did not support that is because I do think this is a significant development. It is activating 3 street frontages, and I think that public art contribution is reasonable when you consider that public upgrade that will happen through this development, and I think that there would be more than ample opportunity to provide that public art to enhance the user experience. So all in all, not an easy application for the Commission, but I think that where it's landed, I'm happy to support this, and I think that the benefits of this development outweigh than any negatives. I think we've all spoken now, so I'll return to the mover to see if you have any further comments to add.
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll put the development application. Is there any dissent? Commissioner Adair? Thank you very much. Noted. We will record that. That concludes the item today, but we do have a few other matters just to work through. Just to note in item 5, State Administrative Tribunal applications, noting that we do have a couple there that are still underway in relation to the renewable energy farm known as Flat Rocks, and in relation to Claysbrook Road, Perth, the continued operation of the Wholesome Concrete Batching Plant. Members, is there any urgent or other business that you wish to raise today? No, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank everyone today. Thank you very much to the deputies and to the members of the public who've come in person today. We have provided this larger room in readiness for you all to come and attend in person. So I appreciate that you've taken the time to do that today, and I'd also just like to express my thanks to all of those who have engaged throughout this process and have provided throughout the consultation. So thank you, and I declare the meeting closed at 3:56 p.m.